Hey everyone, welcome back to today's video. So today we'll be creating a Pygame tutorial on how to create the chess game. So I'll be going through the code line by line, and by end of the video you'll be able to create your own chess game. Let's get started. So before we get started, let's see the images. So these are the images I want to use for my chess pieces. So you can download these images. I'll link the images in the description box below. Now let's get started. Let's start by importing the necessary libraries. So we start with these two libraries, Pygame and Sys. So Pygame is the library that is going to help us build this chess game, and it will handle all the graphics and input from the user. Next, we'll initialize the Pygame. This line will initialize all the modules in Pygame, and we need to call this function before using any other part of Pygame. So think of it like starting up the engine for our game. Next, we will define the constants. So next we can define the constants. So this would be initializing, this will be constants. So I am using width and height constants as 800. 800 should be a square size, width by 8. So here we define the width and the height to define the dimensions of the game window in pixels, and the square size calculates the size of each square on the chessboard by dividing the width by the window by 8, since a chessboard has 8 rows and 8 columns. Now let's define the colors. So I'm going to use different colors for my chess. So I'm planning to use white. So I'm going to define white as the X code, and the black to be, these are the RGBK codes, brown. So you can use any color that you'd like. So I'm using brown and yellow. Okay, so these works as a tuple representing the RGBK values for different colors. So these are used for drawing the chessboard and highlight the pieces. Next, let's create the screen. So first let's define the variable screen equal to pygame dot display dot set mode, and pass in the width and height. Next, pygame dot display dot set caption as maybe chess game. So first I'm going to create a window using the width and the height specified, and next I'm going to set the title of the window as chess game. This can be whatever name that you want to give for the window, Pygame window. Next, let's define the class. So I'm going to define the class chess piece class. define init self, pass in the color, type image. So first let me define the color variable, then self dot type equal to type self dot image equal to pygame dot image dot load the image, then we have py self dot image. So we want to scale the image that we imported, so I'm going to use pygame dot transform dot scale self dot image, pass in square size that we defined earlier, comma square size, and finally set self dot has moved to false. This will work as a flag. So first this class is represented by the name chess piece. These are the chess pieces that I have imported as images. So the first thing is we have to initialize the methods like set, color, type, and what type of image that we want, whether it's a pawn or knight or queen or king, etc. And the image, the visual representation of the piece, and then we resize the image to square and has moved attribute tracks whether the piece has been moved. Next, let's initialize the board. So we have to initialize the board. So to do that, I'm having board equal to none for underscore in a range of 8 for underscore in range of 8. So basically this creates an 8x8 grid. That's basically the chessboard where each square is initialized to none, and we will later fill this grid with the chess pieces. So I think I have to close this here. So this is a list of list. Next, let's set the current player. So we'll have current player 1, which is the white. Current player variable set to white. And then, so this current player will track whose turn it is. So there will be two players, one is the white and another is the black. Next we have selected piece set to none and selected position set to none. Here this is to track the selected piece. So here these are the two variables that will store the information about the current piece that are currently selected by the player, if any, and their position. Next, let's go to the functions that we want to create. So the first one will be initialize the board. So this function will initialize the chessboard with all the pieces in their starting position. So first let's initialize a position for pawns, for column in range of 8. We have board 1 and column equal to chess piece. Pass in the color, which type, and the image that we want to use. So I'm going to use this image from my folder images. So images slash black pawn. So this is the image that I want to use. Next, let me do the same for white as well. So I have to give white the position. So instead of black, I pass in white. Pawn. White underscore pawn, this image. So basically this loops through all the 8 columns, placing the pawns on the row 1 and white pawns on the row 6. Next, let's place the rooks. So to do that, I have also created. So inside the for loop, I'm going to pass the position of the rooks as 0, 0 is equal to chess piece black. The type is rook and the image name is black rook. So I'm going to do the same for the white. So white will be placed in the position 7. So next I do the same for other players like knights and bishop. For the rest of the players. So I do the same for the rest. Let's do the indentation. So these are under the for loop. So the first one, so we first place the pawn and then rook. Next we place the knight on row 0 and 1, whereas white is in 7 and 1. Next bishop, queens, and finally kings. Now let's use the function draw. So this draw function is going to draw the chessboard on the screen. So let me define the function. So this for loop ends here. After that, I just do the indentation for the next function called draw board. This function is basically to draw pieces for row in range 8, for column in range 8, so color equal to white if row plus column modulo 2 equal to 0. else brown. Next we have to draw using pygame.draw a rectangle, pass in the screen, color, and then column size, square size, column into square and row into square, into square, comma, row into square size, comma, square size, comma, square size. Next, so this loops through all the squares on the board and alternates between white and brown for each square and draws the square using Pygame's draw.rect function, and we use the column and row as the square size. Now next we have to use an if selected position pygame.draw direct, then use screen, color should be yellow, and pass in the selected position of 1 times square size, comma, square size, comma, square size. So if a piece is selected, it highlights the color to yellow just for the user to visualize it, easier to play. Next, let's go on to draw the pieces. So this is to draw the board. Next is to draw the pieces. So we have to use a function called draw piece. In there we have to define for row in range, so this iterates through all the rows, and for column in range set piece equal to board of row and column, and if piece screen dot split equal to piece dot image, comma, column times square size, comma, row times square size. So this loops through all the positions of the board from row to column, and then if a piece exists at the position, it draws its image on the screen using this blit. So the next function would be get valid moves. So this function basically gets the valid moves for each piece in our game. So this is the core logic of our chess game. So let me explain you the entire code line by line. So the first one is get valid moves. So this is basically to calculate the valid moves for a given piece, and it takes in this case it's a pawn first. So the type we use is pawn. The chess piece, that those moves are calculated. Then we have row. the current row position in the piece and the column is the current column position in the piece. So now we create an empty list called moves, and then inside it first we check the type. So the first type is if it is a pawn, then it enters this if loop, and it calculates the direction. So pawn moves differently depending on their color. So the white pawn is going to move up the board towards the smaller rows, whereas the black pawns is going to move the board towards the larger rows. So this is captured in this direction variable. So first the white pawn moves -1 direction, which is the upward, and the black one is going to move in the plus direction. So next, so we see the first condition, it checks if the space directly in the front of the pawn is empty. So if it is 0, then it is going to move one step forward in the target position. Is within the boundaries. So I define the boundaries of the board as row plus direction and column, and the space is if the space is empty. Next, the double step. So the pawns can move 2 steps forward from their starting position. So row 6 for our white and row 1 for black. So this is only possible if the front space, if the spaces in the front of them are empty. So we have to check that here. If that is empty, then the white pawns, if they are on the row 6 and both 1 and 2, first step 1 and step 2 ahead are empty, then it moves with by 2 direction. And same applies for black. And then we have to capture the movements when they move diagonally to attack. So pawns capture pieces diagonally, so the code checks the valid diagonal positions. So DC represents the diagonal direction. In -1 the left diagonal and +1 is the right diagonal. It checks whether the opponent's piece diagonally in front of the pawn. So if the space contains a piece of opposite color, so for black, if there is a white coin there, it's going to attack the and kill it, and it's the vice versa for the other. So if the space contains a piece of the opposite color, then the pawn can move forward and capture that. So this is the logic for the piece pawn. The same, let's go on for rook. So for the rook, it's a bit different. So for rook, what we generally do is the rook can move horizontally or vertically on the board. This means it can move in 4 different directions, whether it's upward direction is the negative row movement, downward direction is a positive row movement, left is going to be the negative column movement, and right is going to be the positive column movement. So let's see, so this is the first line. It checks if it's a rook, and then it enters the for loop which defines all the 4 directions. So this 1 0 is going to be moving down. So we increase the row whereas the column is 0, and the next is -1, 0, which is moving up. So it's increase in the row, decrease in the row, and then next we have 0, 1, which is the column increase, so moving right, and similarly 0, -1 is moving left in the column wise. Next, it's going to check the moves. So RC equal to, so basically here the code sets the potential position R, C by adding the direction row plus dr to the current position, and now it goes into a while loop, ensuring that rook stays within the bound of the chess 8x8 chessboard, and it will keep checking the position until it reaches the edge of the board or hits another piece. So next we have a if condition. Here it checks if the square R and C is none, meaning it's empty, then the rook move there. So the move is added to the list called valid moves. So the initial list that we created. And next if else. So else meaning if the square R comma C has a piece of opposite color, then the rook can capture it. The move is added to the moves.append using the append method, and the loop is stopped with a break since the rook can't move the past piece. So next we have else break. So if the square contains a piece of the same color, then the rook can't move there, so it has to break the loop and stopping further movement in that particular direction. Next it continues the searching by after checking the square. It updates the position and keeps moving in the same direction by adding to the dr and dc, which is the current direction and the current position. So this is the code for rook. Next we have the knight. So knight is simple. So basically knight is going to move in a L-shaped direction. So which consists of 2 steps in one direction and 2 steps in the perpendicular direction and vice versa. So this is represented by a tuple here I have listed. So 2 comma 1 is nothing but it moves 2 rows down and 1 column in the to the right, and minus 1 comma minus 2 it moves going to move 1 row up and 2 columns to the left. So we have different combinations for that. Next we have another tuple which is drdc. So this is each tuple dr and dc. This calculates the current position of the row and the column for the knight by adding dr to the current row and dc to the current column. So dr and dc is the current row and current column. Next we have an if condition. So this is going to check whether we have the boundary condition where it's greater than equal to, the row is greater than equal to 0 and the column is greater than equal to 0 but less than 8, and so this ensures the knight stays within the boundary of 8 cross 8 chessboard. And then we have a board of R and C. So the target square is empty and it's none. Then there is an opponent piece on the screen, or it's if there is an opposite color, it's going to capture it. And we are going to append the move of this into the moves list. So this is for if this was a valid move, then it is going to capture, else it will just quit this if loop. So this is for knight. Next we have the same for bishop. So bishop can only move in the forward direction is a possible position, and it can also move diagonally. So diagonal positions is captured here, 1 comma 1, 1 comma minus 1, minus 1 comma 1 and minus 1 comma minus 1. So it can either move down, move left, up right and up left. Next we have to have the same thing here. The row and column is captured with the direct column and direct row positions. So each starts by checking the next square, and here I have a for loop, and this ensures that bishop stays within the boundary. So if it's less than 8, then we check if there is another if the position that we want to move has a piece already there. Then if that is none, then we append the valid position to moves. If not, we just quit, break. And if that color is a different, so for white if it's a black, then we just capture the piece and kill it. So this is how we do it for bishop. And then finally queen, and let's see queen and king quickly. So for queen, it's going to move in all directions, 8 possible ways. So horizontally left, right, vertically up, down and diagonally in almost 4 directions. Similar to bishop, top left, top right, bottom left and bottom right. So that's captured in this for loop. And similarly we have the row and column. Then we use the if loop to check whether we are within the 8 cross 8 chess. Then if the position of that particular thing is none, and then we move there and append it to the valid moves. If not, we just, if it is a different color, then we kill it, else we break. Finally, for the king, so king can move exactly one square in any direction, horizontally, vertically or diagonally, and king cannot move to a square that contains a piece of the same color. So for dr in -1, 0 and -1 position, and the column is also -1, 0 and -1 position, and if both the dr and dc are 0, then we continue. So change in the row, and these will give the possible combinations for the king. Next, we calculate the position row comma column using row plus dr and column plus dc. So this will calculate the position of the king where it's trying to move based on its current row and column position. And we check the boundaries similar to this, whether it's within the 8 cross 8. So if it falls out of it, it's not going to be checked, it just exits. Or if it is within, then it will check the row, or if that particular position is none, then it's going to move to that position. And if the color is different, then it's going to capture it, and that is appended to the valid moves, else it is going to break the if and comes out of it. Finally, we return all the moves to this particular function, from this function, and we are going to capture it. So next, let me go to the next definition. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to write a function to check if the king is in check, which is the checkmate. Sorry, not checkmate. This function is basically to check if the king is in check. So let's create a function to check if the king is in check. So define is check, pass in the color. So we are going to capture the king's position using the variable king pos. First set to none, and we are going to search for r in range 8, for column in range 8, and if board r and c and board r and c dot color equal to color, and board r and c equal to king. I think I used a small letter, king. Then I'm going to use this position to update. If not, I break this, exit, and if king position, directly break it. So in this case, it searches the board to find the position of the king for a better of the given color. So it searches for the color, and then if that key if that piece is a king, then it updates the position of the king to check, and if not, it just breaks out of the loop. Next, I have a Next, once this is done, next I want to check if an opponent piece can capture the king. So to do that, I have if r in range for c in range, piece is set to r and c, and if piece and piece dot color is not equal to the same color, if the king position that we just got it from the and the get valid moves piece then we return true, else return false. So here we are going to check if the opponent can move to the king's position. So if it is true, the king is in check and it returns true, else it returns false. Next we have to check for the checkmate. So I have a function to check for checkmate. Define is game over for range r in range 8, c in range 8. So I find the piece position using R and C, and if the piece and the piece color is equal to the current player, then valid moves is set to get valid moves, pass in the piece, row and column, and write a for loop for move in valid moves. Try to move it. So I create a temporary variable called temp, and we have move 0 and move of 1. Next we have board of move of 0, move of 1 is equal to piece C set to none, and we check if the king is check, the current player. So first we check all possible moves for the current player, and for each moves, if temporarily makes the move and checks if the player is still in check, and later on if any move results in the player not being in check, the game will not get over, else it gets over. So we have to undo the move. To do that, we have board of RC set to piece, board of move 0 and move 1 is temp. If not check, then we return false and continue the game, else we return true and exit the game. So next function that we want to look into is the function to handle mouse clicks. So we are going to create this function as handle click and pass the position. So first we have set the global variable selected position, piece and position, current player. So the first is column. So we define this column equal to position 0 by the square size, and the row is equal to position 1 divided by the square size. So this is going to convert the mouse click position to the particular board position, board coordinates. Next we have an if condition. So when the selected piece is none, then piece is set to the row and column, the current position, and if the piece and the piece color is equal to current player, then we set the selected piece as the current piece and the position is also updated. So if no piece is currently selected, then selects the clicked piece and continues to update it. Else we have this to get the valid moves of the selected piece and the position 0 and 1. So this is going to move the piece. Let's see example, board of row and column is equal to selected piece. Then it checks if it sets the selected piece to be none and it moves forward, and that variable is set to true. And then it is going to check for the pawn promotion, and it checks for this pawn promotion and promotes to queen if applicable. Next we switch the turns. So by this is going to switch the turn between black and white. Next finally it is going to check if the game is over. So that is going to print whether it's a checkmate, and it says if the player loses, it's going to print checkmate, else it's going to print stalemate. And finally it's going to set the selected piece and position to none and going to repeat the same, and it resets it. Finally we have to create the main function. So the main loop starts here. So where we are going to call the main, and we are going to initialize the board, the class that we first created. And next we have to continuously check for the event. So I'm going to create a while loop for that. While true for event in Pygame dot event dot get, and if it checks if the event dot type is equal to Pygame dot quit. If true, then it's going to quit the game and exit the sys, and it's going to clear all the memory. Else if the event dot type is equal to pygame dot mouse button down, then we are going to handle go and call this handle click function and pass the pygame dot mouse dot get position. And finally, we also want to call the draw board method, draw piece method, and pygame dot display dot flip method. So finally, we are going to call our main program now. Let's run the code. So go to terminal. I'm doing a pip install, and then I'm going to try to run the Python code. Okay, I think I am not able to see this element. Let's check back the code again. Okay, I think I had an indentation issue here. So this should be outside of the for loop because we only want the pawns to be placed repeatedly. And then for this, I think for the rooks, I forgot to place it on both sides. So like knights and bishops are going to get placed here on both sides like this. Only king is only one and queen is only one, but whereas bishop, knights and rooks needs to be placed on both sides. So I think I have to place it on both sides. So 0, 0, and the position of rook should be 7, 0 for white. So next I have to create board of 0, 7. And for the white, I need to place it at 7, 7. Let's save it. And let's quit the application and try to rerun it. Okay. So now you can see the window, the chess game window, and we have placed all the chess pieces. And so this is all the pawns. Next we have the rooks, the knight, bishop, the queen and the king. So the first player one will be the white that we set. So the current player is going to be white. So let's start clicking on any. So I have an error here, says that line 245 draw board. Let's go to line 245. Let's go to that function or rectangle pause position. I have an issue here. I only have placed 1, but I also need to update for the position 0. Size, now square size. So this is to highlight the window. Now let's run the game. Okay, so this is the window. So we can just move the white player first and then the black. Now we can move the knight. You can move one of the pawn, and knight can only move in the diagonal in an L shape, and pawn can move one step forward, and the rook can move in the forward 2-step direction. And the bishop can move in the diagonal way. So this is how we move the position of the black and capture this knight. So we have replaced it. So that's it. So I hope you like this video. If you like it, please give a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.